So let's get to this first story. I think you will be interested in this. This is from the Des Moines Register. By the way, this is the Iowa Revolution podcast. Thanks for everybody that's joining us right now on this live Substack. And for all of you that follow us on Substack, iowarevolution.substack.com. Also follow Dr. Bob's Substack. He has Deep Midwest Politics and Culture, which is where I'm sure a lot of you are coming from. And then also Cedar Creek Nature Notes is on Substack and on Instagram. This is from the Des Moines Register. The National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium draws about 200,000 people annually, well over 3 times the population of Dubuque, where it's located on the river's edge. But this month, the regional tourism destination, a Smithsonian affiliate, got notice along with dozens of other nonprofit museums, libraries, and cultural attractions across the state that one of its sources of funding, grants from the federal government, had disappeared. Swept up in the onslaught of 124 executive orders issued by President Donald Trump since his January inauguration. By the way, we're not even to 100 days yet of his presidency. And cuts directed by the Department of Government Efficiency, guided by, of course, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, have been large numbers of grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities and the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Both have supported exhibits, programming, and collections at the museum for more than 2 decades, including a $31,000 grant this year. It is supposed to help the museum carry out its 20-year interpretive master plan, a blueprint of sorts for how it will engage future visitors. Like other museums, libraries, and cultural attractions across the state, the museum and aquarium is scrambling to look for other sources of funding, crafting contingency plans, and searching for more support.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's devastating to a lot of museums, especially the smaller museums without large endowments. It's I don't know. It's just devastating. It's part of the drive for the new Trump Musk dark ages. They don't want us to be educated. Remember, Trump likes poorly educated people, and he wants to make more of us poorly educated. And so, and it's just really pretty sad in the sense that for a lot of people, the public museums are one of the few places that they can afford to take their kids. It's something where and our public libraries that are under attack as well. And so a lot of places hours will be reduced. For example, maybe no more Sunday hours or shortened Saturday hours. So it's just restricting access to the educational materials that we all need. And it's also just museums are so wonderful. They share the stories of our times. They're always rotating. They're getting new exhibits. They try to be as fresh as they can. They need long-term planning. They need long-term commitments in terms of finances. And and then at the same time, there's the double whammy in that they're supposed to take out all of the important DEI stuff. I mean, that is essentially the history of all, of well, it's not the history of non-white people. It's the reduction of telling the stories of the contributions that non-white, especially that people that aren't non-white males. You have to be able to tell those stories, and they're trying to take those stories off the book. And there's only one reason: it's to erase the contributions so that you can erase the people. This is right now. It's kind of it's an intellectual. I don't know how else to say it. It's an intellectual kind of genocide, wiping people off the face of the map. And our museums have really done a great job over the last 40 or 50 years of telling stories that were once suppressed. So this is particularly tragic.
You spent a lot of your life in education. You also, of course, have your PhD, your Dr. Bob Leonard. You spent a lot of time teaching at the University of New Mexico. One of my favorite memories from when I was a kid, and of course, a lot of what we did was what we would call field trips. You go out and actually experience the work. You go to museums or you go to aquariums and you go to things like this. And those are some of the most memorable times that I had throughout my educational career.
Well, and I remember growing up, I think in 5th grade, everybody had a trip to the Iowa Historical Museum. Right. And there was always the docent there to help us. And they always told the same story of the stuffed, bison or buffalo that that they could run in, through a train, and that always got,
Right.
in fifth grade, that was very impressive. But there's so many different stories. I remember the giant whale mandible or jaw hanging from the ceiling, and all of the the different cultural things. It was just like, especially for me, growing up with, at the time, almost all white kids, seeing other cultures represented and their accomplishments was something special. And the alternative was ignorance of other cultures and other peoples, which is what they want us to be in their authoritarian white ethno state.
And you mentioned too, it'll be so. This is, of course, about one of the more popular museums, aquariums in the entire state. 200,000 visitors per year at the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium in Dubuque. So this is a very popular destination. They can probably make a little bit of money on their own. But you mentioned it's the smaller libraries in small towns, rural museums that literally depend on these funds to get them through a month, let alone a year. And and you said they're going to scale back hours, but most of these, if they aren't closed already, are going to have to just close down. And then we just entirely lose that history.
Yeah, we do. And then also, I mean, these kinds of things, museums also attract tourist dollars. I mean, I like Dubuque. I like Dubuque for the shops and the scenic nature of it and for the history. But if you take away, the museum, or aspects of the museum, shorten the hours. I mean, just think of the loss of tourism.
Exactly. And this is a huge part of Dubuque's tourism. That's one of the reasons why they built this museum in Dubuque, was to attract more tourists to the city of Dubuque. So it's not just going to hurt these individual museums and libraries. It's actually going to hurt the economies that have built up around them as well, all throughout the country, not just in our state. Let's get to our next story here. This is from NPR, by the way. I know we're having issues. I don't know. It's got to be a Substack thing. I don't know why we're having that metallic sound, but sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't. And it seems like I get stuck with it today. This is from NPR. A survey of more than 500 political scientists finds that the vast majority think the United States is moving swiftly from liberal democracy towards some form of authoritarianism. In a benchmark survey known as the Bright Line Watch, U.S.-based professor rate the performance of American democracy on a scale from 0, which would be complete dictatorship, to 100, which is a perfect democracy. After President Trump's election in November, scholars gave American democracy a rating of 67. Several weeks into Trump's second term, that figure plummeted to 55. By the way, just as an aside, how smart are these professors?
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I guess they aren't projecting. Maybe they're told not to project. What is the arc
That is a good point.
for authoritarianism? And so I guess that half of them think we're halfway there. I guess, but I don't know. I mean, we're already there. What don't they know about him not obeying the courts? What do they not know about ICE kidnapping people off of the street that are here legally, kidnapping graduate students that the only thing they did wrong was free speech? And it's just they're sending people to El Salvador prisons, and they're targeting, investigating political enemies. They're coming after law firms. They're coercing law firms into giving them, free pro bono work. I mean, it's an authoritarian regime as we speak. And people will say, well, people aren't dying, but yes, they are. They're dying because of, especially around the world, because we're no longer helping other peoples. We're not helping people with HIV. We're not feeding starving kids. Millions of people are dying as we speak as a result of Trump, Musk policies. So, I mean, but they're not dying here. And I guess we don't care about, I guess most of us do care about, but our institutions as led by Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and actually our whole Republican Senate, they don't care. And our House of Representatives, they don't care as long as they're dying overseas. And that we've abandoned our commitment and letting the soft power of Russia and Hungary and China grow as we retreat into a terrible shell.
So this is from the professor of government at Dartmouth. He's also the co-director of Bright Line Watch, saying that drop from 67 to 55 was a precipitous drop. Says there's certainly consensus we're moving in the wrong direction. Perry said the decline between November and February was the biggest since they started doing this survey on threats to American democracy in 2017. So not the oldest survey around. In the survey, respondents consider 30 indicators of democratic performance, including whether the government interferes with the press, check, punishes political opponents, and whether the legislature and the judiciary can check executive authority, check and not check. Fear of government retribution is now spreading through society. A scholar who spoke to NPR for this story later asked to not be quoted, saying he feared the Trump administration might try to punish him by slashing research grants he's working on. In a recent NPR series on free speech, many people did not want to be identified by name. How ironic is that?
Yeah. No, we're living in fear. A lot of people are living in fear. And, I understand why people that want to keep their jobs, don't speak out or don't say anything. But what they need to do is, if you're in the administration and they ask for the loyalty oath, you're like a prisoner, go ahead and give the loyalty oath, but then act to, be sand in the gears of the machine, do whatever you can. And I understand that. I understand why faculty and people at some companies don't speak out. But if people come together, if the institutions come together, then they're more powerful. And I think that's the way to respond, not to, to obey. And I think that people that are secure, where are all the old retired professors? Where are they speaking out in defense of their history? Where are they? They don't, and part of the problem is they don't really know how to speak out, because a lot of faculty haven't been public facing. They've been used to publishing in scientific journals or humanities journals or whatever. They aren't used to,
or even the local newspaper, which has now disappeared.
Yeah. So, but I think that the people that are secure need to be speaking out, and I think institutions need to stand together. And I think that, corporate boards, institutional boards, university boards, colleges, I think that, they need to stand strong and together and resist, and then, and use their alumni. There's just all kinds of people that's jobs aren't in jeopardy that need to be, stepping forward.
And Trump has shown that he's a typical bully, in that if you stick up to him, he tends to back down, and back down fairly quickly.
Yeah, he sure did off of Jerome Powell just in one day.
Well, and even China this morning, he's saying that he may take off all the tariffs against China. So because they obviously have stood up to him and have enough power. That's the thing. Once they hit the power needs to stand up. Harvard is another good example. They have the power, they have the money to stand up to them, and it's important that they do, and that they do follow through with this lawsuit and win.
Yes, absolutely.
So speaking of judges and lawsuits, a federal judge said Tuesday that the Trump administration is ignoring court orders, obstructing the legal process, and acting in bad faith by refusing to provide information about the steps they've taken, if any, to free a mistakenly deported man from an El Salvador prison and return him to the U.S. Quoting U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnes here, for weeks, defendants have sought refuge behind vague and unsubstantiated assertions of privilege, using them as a shield to obstruct discovery and evade compliance with this court's orders. Defendants have known, at least since last week, that this court requires specific legal and factual showings to support any claim of privilege. Yet they have continued to rely on boilerplate assertions. That ends now, she said. She gave the administration until 6 o'clock today, Wednesday, to provide those details. The U.S. Supreme Court ordered the Trump administration nearly 2 weeks ago to facilitate Kilmar Obregon Garcia's return to the U.S. from a notorious Salvadoran prison, rejecting the White House's claim that it couldn't retrieve him after mistakenly deporting him. By the way, they didn't deport him. They just kicked him out of the country and then kidnapped him. Trump administration officials have pushed back, arguing that it is up to El Salvador, though the president of El Salvador has also said he lacks the power to return to Obregon Garcia. By the way, you know what, Dr. Bob, we need to go down and work this guy out. Somebody needs to go down and get somebody with power needs to stand up and say, I'm breaking him out. If I was Jeff Bezos, if I was Elon Musk, if I had the most money in the world, I would fly a chopper down there and say, he's coming in the plane with me and we're going home.
Well, it should be that simple, but it should be simpler than that. I mean, Trump should just say we made a mistake and bringing him back. But so we always have to think about, first we have to think of the humanity, all of those people in prison in those horrible conditions without any due process. We have to think about their families. And this is horrific. And I don't understand how so many Americans just are willing to just accept that. It's cruel. It's inhumane. And it's part of dehumanizing immigrants. And so if you dehumanize them, you can treat them poorly, do anything that you want to them since they're not human. In Trump's words, I forget the exact words that he used to use, but he calls them animals. And so all of this is it shows that many of our Republican friends and colleagues and family members that they've just bought this dehumanization, and it's just going to continue once you dehumanize. And then it's the LGBTQ community, it's immigrants, it's anybody whose skin isn't white. They're dehumanizing them. And what's the purpose historically of dehumanizing people? Ultimately, the goal is extermination, and I don't know how else to put it. And people, years ago, maybe, I don't know, a year into Trump's first term, I wrote a piece hoping to get it in the New York Times saying, what if Trump doesn't leave office? And it was, oh, you're being hyperbolic, Bob. You're just exaggerating. You're fear mongering. None of this is true. But here we are. And so if we're dehumanizing, otherizing people, not embracing everybody as part of our shared humanity, the next step is an evil one. And we are heading that direction. We're already that direction, and the American people aren't standing up and doing anything about it. We're just accepting. I know there was a congressman that went down. I know the Democratic Party objects, and thank God the courts are trying to stand up. But we've never been at this place in history before here in the United States, but we've seen plenty of precedents around the world, and we know what's next.
Can you just talk about J.D. Vance here for a little bit? Like, I just came him up. He's been in the news because he probably killed the Pope. Now we've seen a lot of death and destruction after his visit to India, I believe. So this overseas trip is going swimmingly for J.D. Vance. But he's just, and I also bring him up because he continuously tells this lie of the Biden administration willingly let 20 million illegal immigrants into the country. Tells that lie all the time, and he goes to other countries and tells that lie about his own country. Well, we're the entire, even the total amount of quote unquote illegal immigrants in this country right now is around 11 million.
Well, it's to make all the white people afraid.
Right.
And it's to make all the, brown people afraid too. Because
the thing is, if anybody knows how to make a Trump voter afraid, it is J.D. Vance. He wrote a fucking book.
Well, and, there's aspects of that book that are, it's full of self-loathing. I mean, he writes about the tough conditions he grew up in, and then trashes, his relatives and friends, and it's all their fault. And so it's not the system. It's not, income inequality. It's not the oppression of the capitalist state that, drives people to cope with, drugs or, it's
no, it's the moral failings of his mother and family. Yeah. They needed Catholicism, apparently. Yeah.
Apparently. So, there's a certain amount of self-loathing that J.D. Vance must have. But he's a man without any morals or without any principles. We saw how quickly he shifted from calling Trump, America's Hitler to being, Hitler. Yeah. Yeah.
Or,
and so he's,
take your pick of whichever Hitler flacky J.D. Vance role fits.
Yeah, and he has this pseudo-intellectual way of speaking and acting like, he knows what he's talking about. And Yeah, and he's he's the puppet of hedge fund managers. And one of the things that bothers me about JD Vance too is that he's invested in this company that buys up agricultural land. Okay. And so I forget what it's called, Ag Acre or something like that. But anyway, if farmers the thing that would what JD Vance would like and what he would most profit from is destroying the farm economy. People would have to sell their farms and his company would gobble them up. And
By the way, it's called Acre Trader.
Acre Trader. Yeah, and why this isn't a bigger media story, I don't know. But he stands to personally profit from the tariffs and the destruction of the farm economy, because then all the little guys will have to get out, and then his company can buy it up. All the big agricultural people, the big ag people don't care where the land comes from, where the products come from, where soybeans or corn comes from. They just want it as cheap as they can. And there's I was talking with a person that ran a grain elevator, in a nearby town, and he had to deliver to 1,500 farmers. One day he said, "Wouldn't it be great if I only had to deliver to 40 or 50?"
Right.
And so the agricultural companies want that consolidation, and so JD Vance will profit off of it. But this administration profiting off of things is not anything new.
So you mentioned attack not only on immigrants, but all sorts of groups from the Trump administration, one of those being LGBTQ individuals. This may be the saddest story that I've seen in less than 100 days of his Trump presidency. This is from Mother Jones. The federal government plans to eliminate services for LGBTQ youth who call 988, the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline, according to a Health and Human Services budget draft leaked last week. The budget, first reported by the Washington Post, would go into effect in October if approved by Congress. Since the hotline's launch in 2022, callers have been able to speak with counselors trained to work with specific at-risk populations, including LGBTQ youth, who are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their peers. The Service for LGBTQ Youth has received 1.3 million calls, texts, or chats since 2022, so just in 2.5 years. In February, the program received an average of 2,100 contacts per day. This is from Paulo Del Vecchio. He's the former director of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration's Office of Recovery. He says, "Here we are cutting off the nation's lifeline to those in crisis. Due to the discriminatory practices of the Trump administration, they're pulling that life preserver away from thousands and thousands of people." Mental health experts say that trained counselors provide key cultural competency to LGBTQ youth, understanding the stress caused by recent political attacks, the importance of using appropriate pronouns, and the ways in which the youth often face lack of family support and harassment.
Yeah, and this is on the heels of them saying that teachers and school counselors and librarians can't talk to the kids either.
Right.
And so any counseling that they could have gotten on these issues from trained adults, is gone, and this hotline is gone. Now ask yourself, why would they want that to happen? It's just more marginalization. They don't care about those kids. They don't care if
they want them to die. They're fine with them committing suicide, is what that says.
Yeah. The only other explanation was a part of a broad sweep of just a chainsaw across everything in that department, and it wasn't targeting the gay kids in particular.
Well, that's just poor foresight, because all of these things have consequences. I just saw a headline today on CNN saying that the FDA chair resigned due to those just drastic, willy-nilly cuts. There was no plan. It wasn't, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to pare this down. You do this, you do that. It's just that person's gone. Everybody else took off the slack.
Yeah. No, they want to break everything. They want to break everything and reconstruct it in their image. They want to sell it off for parts so the billionaires can profit. And it's just what they want to do. People, and it's like the financial advisors, say, stay the course, stay the course, stay the course. And it's just, you have to worry sometimes if they want. I think they're going to break the economy. They want to break the economy. The only question is, how bad are they going to break it? And they don't know what they're doing. I mean, they really don't know what they're doing.
Yeah,
And it took,
every expert, we talked about it. Every expert is saying, well, not every, but most experts are saying we're heading towards or not, or already in authoritarianism. And every expert, every economist is saying that these Trump tariffs and this trade war is going to be catastrophic for the entire world and the U.S. specifically.
yeah, it is.
And they're whistling through the graveyard.
And everybody,
because they can't admit they're wrong. They can't even admit that they lost an election. So they're not going to admit that, oh, this is wrong either.
No. And everybody that is watching a MAGA media, I watch it every day. I listen every day. Everything is going great. There's just going to be a little pain, but then it's all going to be glorious. And they're hearing that from all the MAGA media.
Yeah, and wasn't it that we had collected $500 million in tariffs since those went into effect, and it cost the economy, what, upwards of $4 or $5 billion in market capitalization?
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's been devastating, and it's just going to get worse. But the fact of the matter is that Fox News and Trump and all the administration, they can all lie all they want. But we're going to have real numbers that will tell the truth. And it'll be the ag markets. It'll be the price of eggs at the grocery store. It'll be the price of gas. We're all going to see the truth. They can't hide that from us. Although they do want to hide a lot of things. They want, getting rid of a lot of data gathering so they can tell whatever story that they want to tell about the environment and water quality, et cetera. So they're getting rid of a lot of the statistical services so they can tell any story that they want. But we will know at the grocery store, we'll know at the gas tank, the farmers will know it when they take their crops to market. The truth will emerge.
They're trying to really actually create that alternate reality that, what was her name, Kellyanne Conway talked about. They want to try to make that everybody's reality. And they're trying really hard, but we got to try really hard to stick up to them. So we haven't had a chance. Obviously, we've had guests, as we mentioned, for the past couple of weeks, and it's been a little while since we've been able to talk about artificial intelligence, Dr. Bob. It's still something that's worrying to me, confounding, amazing. It's just it's the next step in the evolution of technology. And there's also been a lot of talk with AI and Hollywood. The big writer's strike that happened, about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, was largely about artificial intelligence and its use in writing and producing television and movies, etc. Well, this is from the BBC. Films made with the help of artificial intelligence will be able to win top awards at the Oscars, according to its organizers. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences issued new rules on Monday, which said the use of AI and other digital tools would, quote, neither help nor harm the chances of achieving a nomination. Generative AI, which can create text, images, audio, and video in response to simple text prompts, helped to produce some of the films awarded top industry accolades just this March. But the Academy said it would still consider human involvement when selecting its winners. The use of AI in film became a hot topic after Adrian Brody took home the award for Best Actor for his role in The Brutalist at this year's Oscar ceremony in March. I don't know if you knew this, Dr. Bob, but the movie used generative AI to improve Brody's character, his accent when he spoke Hungarian. It then emerged similar voice cloning technology was used to enhance singing voices in the Oscar-winning musical Amelia Perez. I wish artificial intelligence could figure out how to not have this metallic voice that I seem to be having every time we do these fucking Substack live videos, but they're still working on that. But what do you think, Dr. Bob? Here's my thought, just real quick. To me, this tarnishes all movies, because you can never look at anything. And I already live in this world. I'm sure you already live in this world. I'm sure a lot of our viewers, a lot of our listeners already live in this world where you cannot believe a fucking thing. And now we can't even believe that these movies are supposedly the best pictures, the most well done, the most well crafted pieces of art are coming from a fucking computer.
Yes, I am terribly conflicted in the sense that, I spent some time at a retreat with the Iowa Writers Collaborative, and Jason Wall-Smiths, who's a friend of mine who was with the Nadas,
Yeah.
and he just doesn't want anybody using AI. I understand. I understand completely. And about a week before that, I would say his name, but I don't have permission. But a friend wrote some songs. He wrote the lyrics, and he sent me the album. And I didn't read the notes or anything. He sent it to me. And I just went through and listened to it, and I knew that. And I just knew that he had produced it. I'm sitting there, and I'm listening to one of the most beautiful albums that I've ever listened to. The first song brought me to tears. It was his lyrics, AI voices, AI music. You know, he tinkered with it. He's not a musician, but he went, another route in life, but now he's retired. He's a retired firefighter that had to retire because of injuries on the job. And so now he's exploring music, and AI is helping him and putting his words to song. And they're just some of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard.
So that's a good example, I think, of AI helping someone realize a dream. But I think it would be a little bit different if you were to go out and sell that album. Say this 12 collected songs by my name, when it's really not. And then even further, then if you were to win an award, a Grammy for that album, would you be okay with that?
Well, I mean, I think if he told, everybody what it was, I think he should sell it. I don't know. I don't.
Here's a solution. I have a perfect solution. In the Grammys, in the Oscars, you have a category, best AI assisted movie, best AI assisted album.
We've been doing CGI, computer generated effects, for a long time.
Yeah, we have a category, best visual effects.
But we don't have
special effects and all that stuff.
Right, but you don't have best picture with special effects.
No.
It's sort of like, use of steroids. I mean, that's another.
But again, and that also clouds that whole era of baseball. And I'm sure we know that the people are still doing steroids. Guys come up as testing positive all the time. But, there was that era of McGuire and Sosa, late 90s, early 2000s, where even the guys, see, that's the thing, even the guys that weren't doing steroids, that were clean, are tainted because of the ones that did do steroids. And I view it the same way as I see this movie thing, where the people that are actually doing it the right way, not taking steroids, not taking the PEDs, not using the AI, are going to be lumped into the category with people that are cheating and using AI. So then how are we supposed to know who is using it and who isn't?
We don't know now.
Right. And I would have never known if Adrian Brody used AI, or, I don't know if it was him. They used his voice artificially, improved, or his accent improved with this movie. I wouldn't have known that.
Well, you would think that you would think that he would recognize that was unfair.
Well, and that's the thing. It's disgusting to me that he won the Oscar. Not only was he nominated, he won an Oscar in part by using artificial intelligence. So he's like the Barry Bonds of acting.
He is. Pretty interesting.
Do you hear that, people? Dr. Bob agreed with me. My kitty's right here. At least my kitty heard that.
Well, you know what? What people don't know and we need to reveal is that I am actually an AI-generated image.
You are a figment of my imagination.
That's right. I am your Frankenstein. You created me. I'm your digital Frankenstein.
What is that? Isn't that a play, even a movie called Harvey? With the giant rabbit? You're my giant rabbit.
And your magic? No, because they can see me too.
Oh, that's true. That's right. You actually are. You're like a hologram. I gotcha. Are you ready for the factoid of the week? I've got 2 factoids of the week. First of all, this is an animal one. I know you like animal facts. Pelicans have 3 stomachs, and one of them is just for bones.
I think that's fascinating.
A literal bag of bones.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that. I was tempted to look it up and act like I knew it. No, but
Well,
I
you could
didn't.
have done that too. Hey, I mean, everybody's cheating these things. Adrian Brody can use AI to, do his accent for him. He probably honestly just showed up and talked in Adrian Brody's voice, and they were like, "All right, you touch this up with a little AI and give you a Hungarian accent." Factoid number 2. That divider at grocery stores, that little plastic thing that separates stuff on the conveyor belt. Do you know what that's called, Dr. Bob?
I'm sure you're going to tell us.
It's called a spratchet.
Spratchet.
A spratchet.
So
Which is
the thing,
kind of, it's almost too cool of a name for such a mundane item.
so you've got your groceries ahead of me, and I put that spratchet down.
Yep. Yeah. Next time I go to the grocery store, I'm going to tell them make sure you put the spratchet down. I don't want to get us confused. Probably get punched.
I'm not going to be able to not tell the person checking me out. I'll have to tell them that.
Yeah, you'll probably blow their mind. Or bore them to hell. I don't know.
Most of the time,
That
the
tends to
latter.
be something that both you and I are good at, either blowing people's minds or boring them to hell. So, we'll end with top 5 Michael Keaton movies. Do you have a favorite Michael Keaton movie, Dr. Bob? What's the movie that comes to your head when I say Michael Keaton?
Batman.
That's number 2 on the list.
That's not my favorite. He isn't my favorite Batman.
Who is your favorite Batman?
Some guy whose name I can't remember.
Are we talking movies? Adam West? We talking TV Batman?
Well, when I was a kid, I liked Adam West, the TV Batman, but I've liked other Batman. I like George Clooney Batman.
You're the only person in the entire world that's ever said that.
Really?
If we were to do a poll right now with all the people that have played Batman, you would be the 1% that picked George Clooney. And I like George Clooney, and that movie's actually, I think, a little bit underrated. It got a lot of shit when it came out, but it's actually kind of a fun. I mean, it's just a fun Batman movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger's having just horrible puns. Who's the actress? She was in Pulp Fiction. Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy.
Yeah,
it's an underrated movie. And George Clooney, I think, is a little bit underrated Batman. But we're getting off topic here, Dr. Bob. Batman is number 2 on my list. By the way, also, while we're off topic, R.I.P. Val Kilmer, one of my favorite Batmen. In fact, there was a time, I think Christian Bale is probably my new favorite Batman because the movies are so good. But I think Val Kilmer was probably my favorite Batman even before that. Even better than Michael Keaton. Number 5. Top 5 Michael Keaton movies is The Other Guys.
never heard of it.
It stars Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. I'm sure our viewers and listeners, most of them have seen it. It's a fantastic, funny movie. Number 4 this is a movie that I kind of grew up with when I was a kid, Mr. Mom. Do you remember Mr. Mom? Probably came out in like the early 90s, maybe, like around 90-ish.
I know of it, but it's not one I would go to.
Yeah, Michael Keaton just plays, and this was in the 90s when the idea of like a house husband, a stay-at-home dad was starting to take place more often. So he was a stay-at-home dad. His antics at getting better and better at being the stay-at-home dad. Number 3 is Beetlejuice.
Never saw it.
Wow, you've never seen Beetlejuice?
No.
Wow, you hear that, Chomp? Never seen Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice, the sequel that just came out, awful movie. Don't see it. Number 2, as I said, is Batman. Number 1, this was a Best Picture from the Oscars. I hope they didn't use artificial intelligence because it was fantastic. My number 1 Michael Keaton movie is Spotlight.
Never heard of it.
You never heard of Spotlight?
No.
You would be blown away. You would be enthralled.
Would I?
It's about the Boston Globe's Spotlight team, their investigative journalistic team that looks into and is the first people to blow the lid off of the Catholic priest molestation rape scandal.
Yeah, those kinds of controversial things involving kids, I can't take.
I must say, it is a tough watch for sure, but it is very well done.
And important.
Michael Keaton is fantastic in it.
Yeah.
He plays like the editor, like the head of the Spotlight team. So yeah, fantastic movie.
Do you sometimes think that never can you be more astounded at my ignorance, and then the next week I astound you even more?
Yes. Yeah, I thought that Michael Keaton, I mean, for people that are just joining us now that haven't been listening since day one, probably about 4 or 5 shows into this, this podcast, we had top 5 hard candies. And I thought Dr. Bob would literally eaten that up. You've never had a Werther's Original, Dr. Bob.
I had never heard of it until you mentioned it.
How about we get some L's in the chat for Dr. Bob for never having any Werther's Originals? Have you ever had a Jolly Rancher, Dr. Bob?
Nope. I've heard of them, though.
You've had like a peppermint candy, right?
Don't like peppermint.
Butterscotch?
I like butterscotch.
Okay, well, we'll end on that one. At least we found something that Dr. Bob has experienced before. Dr. Bob, thank you so much. Of course, as we said at the top of the show, we do this every week. IowaRevolution.substack.com. Make sure to follow us so that you'll get this emailed to you. You'll get the invite emailed to you when we do Substack Lives like we have been doing. And also make sure you follow Deep Midwest Politics and Culture on Substack. That's Dr. Bob's kind of political and cultural column. And then he also has Cedar Creek Nature Notes on Substack and on Instagram, taking a walk with Dr. Bob in the woods. Dr. Bob, it's always a pleasure. I can't wait to see you again next week.
Thanks, Spencer. And thanks, everybody, for coming.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next week.